Okay, guys, how we doing? Here we are. It's Monday, the 9th of September, and what you guys, so per the polling here, Ethereum was the clear winner, and I'm going to use this. We're kind of dovetail into some conversation I've been having with. Well, you guys saw. One of the members was asking about this here, and then I'm just going to use this as a good opportunity to address this. Okay, so. The first thing I did here, and this is often the case, the Elliott count here is sending mixed signals, so it may be just the kind of thing to where the best trade here is no trade, because this is not clear as to where we are in the count and what's likely where we are next. So as I often suggest to you guys, when it's just you're just confused and you can't see it, strip it bare. Just start from scratch, which is exactly what I've done here, just to go back through the subdivision here, because it's been easy to just kind of flippantly look at this and go, all right, we got 5 down, so nothing happens until this resolves. And that may still be the case here. But it makes you pause just for a second here, having worked through this again. So this, I think is worthwhile here to take a look at this, and then we'll deal with this issue here that a couple of you are asking about. So let's start there. So I'm going to use the word guideline here, but rather than a rule, right? So you could say a guideline or a rule of thumb, right? We're kind of in between the two. The premise is, at what point do we go to log scale? All right, so the guideline, again, I'm trying to choose my words here carefully, is that if you take the high from the low and subtract the difference, if it's more than 3 times the range, that's when you would go to log scale. So if we look here with a low of, well, call it 80 and a high of 360, so it's 3 times that. So we certainly are in a situation where it would not be unreasonable to at least look at log scale. Right now, as to whether that's a hard rule, what I do is I'll look at both, right? So if I see it, and I'm quick to go to log scale if I see it's more than 3 to 1 to see, is that helping me define any of the subdivision here? And in doing that, I think all we've done here is kind of complicate it all the more. So let me stay here just in algorithmic scale here. So what's making this so confusing is the subdivision in this series of impulses. So I think the 1-2 is I think is fairly solid here. Now I am labeling this and trading it as an expanded B wave here. So I don't know that it would really matter here whether or not you were using this as the one here. Neither of these, and this is within, that's within pennies. Regardless of how you're counting that, let me stay with my original count here. Because this looks like a 3, like there's an A, B, C in there, and then we can come down here for the 2. It doesn't really matter, they're so close. But now coming off of this, trying to work the impulse. Well, if that's the 1-2, still here in arithmetic, we've gone well beyond the norm. So if we take 1-2, well, here's the 2-6-1-8. We're well beyond that. So working through the subdivision, if we go 1-2, 1-2, it would appear that we have to go yet again 1-2, and that's complicating the count, because it seems much less likely that we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even though on some exchanges it's exactly 100%. Well, you can see it here. Even here on Coinbase Pro, if I take the length of that 1 and I get it to the tick, if I'm right on it. See, I mean, it's tapping the 1, but it doesn't look like a 3. Even though you can get it, there's an impulse in there. There's a clear impulse in there. For this to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have the rip extension, is it possible? Yeah. Yeah, it is, but it's so close, and from exchange to exchange, you're going to have it to where it's going to be a penny or 2 shy of it. I think it's more probable that we go into yet another 1-2. So in working through all of that subdivision here, well, if this is 1-2 and this is 1-2, well, that would imply, if we're going to allow for this to be the 2, well, I need an impulse here. Well, I've got a clear impulse coming off of this low, clear impulse into this pivot. If it's not going to be the 3, right, and that's just kind of a judgment call. If it's not the 3, that leaves only another 1-2. Well, if that's another 1-2, then this becomes the most probable location for our 3. So again, just working with the tools that we know, right, to help I try and identify. Well, here, if that's the 3, we're getting comfortably beyond. We're not quite to the tick. Here's our high probability zone. But if that's 1, 2, well, we're certainly long enough. Now, it gets a little tricky here as well. So if I have to blow this up here, I know, right? So it's all a function of, so why does it make sense to go through this? And why aren't we talking about what's happening over here? Because it affects how we're labeling this. So if that's going to be the 3, now this is tricky in here. Right, so there is a clear 5 in here, right? So that is hard to miss, right? So the 5 here is completing something. Well, so your first thought is to think, oh, well, maybe could this be the 4? Well, if I were trying to go 1, 2, and I can get a 3 here, it doesn't work. So I think you've got to have, I think this is more probably another expanded B wave, which very much like what we did down here. So I think we've got to go A, B, C into the B and then finish with a diagonal here into the C to give us the 4 at that degree. So allowing for the A, B, C, which again was just like what we had here, very similar, a little higher in the B wave here, but very similar. It's a judgment call, right? You're not going to know whether it's right or wrong until this resolves, and we're back here looking at this subdivision with the benefit of the market revealing what's to come. But I think that plays as the 4, so we go 2 to the 3 here. Here's our 38. We're getting, let's get it right on there. All right, so we're second target within a tick or two of second target. So I think you got to trade this as the completed impulse from this 1, 2 here. So there's the impulse, meaning this 1, 2 would leave a 3 here, and we're still seeking the 4. Right now, it certainly would have looked a lot better here. Now, the fact that we have this little that we carried on here is why I think this is. I wouldn't trade this here. So even though there is. It's just too unclear to me as to what we have. So we have this obvious zone of structure, right? So you can say, oh, it's the wave 1s. You can say it's the structure. Almost doesn't matter. But at this point here, clearly this is demonstrated to be the support. You can see the little low volume node here in the market profile. But what matters is that if this is going to be 1, 2, 3, well, we can't overlap that 1. But we have overlapped that 1 by a tick. Right, so it's creating more just mixed signals. All right, so I can't overlap here. And well, let me get it right back on there so you can see it. So we've overlapped it just enough. So what do you do, right? So you can't. It's almost unless you try and trade it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't quite make it work. So it just becomes. If it's that tight, that close, and you just can't quite make sense, is that enough, right? See, that's not enough for me. I don't want to go 1, 2, 3, or let me rephrase that. I don't want to put money at risk on the idea that I've got a suspect 3 there. Now, could we finish there? Yeah, we could, right? I mean, it's possible, but does that look like the 3? So let's finish it out. So it's more just, this is kind of using your best judgment here. So let me push this off to the side here. If this were going to be the 4 here, right? So pardon me. We'd have 1, 2, 3, 4. So then you'd have to turn this into a diagonal. That doesn't work, right? So it's just through process of elimination. So you can think, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I make that into a diagonal? A, B, C. Well, maybe, right? So this again, that looks like a 5. This looks like a 5. I just don't think it works. So I come back to putting it back together. That becomes the 3. This becomes the 4. Yet now I've had the overlap of that 1. So that now doesn't work. So what to do with that, right? So we have just a massive cluster F here of things that just don't seem to work. So Jesus, can I put those back together? Okay, so let's try again. See if I can get this to work here. So that would be 3. 4. Bear with me. 5. Okay, so that's per that subdivision. All right, I can see why you guys keep asking for this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would imply the 3, but it doesn't work. So what are your choices here? Well, my choice here is if I have this much confusion in this, whether we're in arithmetic or log scale, no trade until I know what's happening or how we're going to resolve this. And just to make it even more complicated, if I go to log scale and if I were thinking, oh, 2 to the 3, well, or just using the secondary pivot here, well, we're right at the golden zone. You see the problem. So now if I go all the way down to the prior low, well, we're sitting at the 50. Now, granted, this is the numbers change here as we go to logarithmic scale here, as we get the compression. Well, we get the compression here in the lower numbers. So then I looked at this and said, God, is there any possible way we could get something corrective here? And I think it's way too much of a force fit. So maybe you can make a case here. Maybe there's a little 3 here. So you might be thinking WXY. Then you want to go XZ, but it would just be so shallow for an X. I think it's hard to argue with the broader structure here being 5 down. So what to do, right? As far as I'm concerned, that means there's no trade here. So I wouldn't trade. Well, it's a secondary pivot. So even if you go down here and you say, could it be? What is this? Right? Cannot be the 3 of an impulse, right? Because we've had the overlap of the 1. Oh, pardon me. We've had the overlap here, so it can't be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's not an option, right? So what's an alternate? Well, I suppose you might be able to trade it this way. If this were going to be the 3, the 4, and the 5, so now we've got 1, 2. Let's see, can I fix that? Oh, pardon me. So we might be able to do it this way. 5, 3, 4. All right, let's bring the 5 in. Okay, so let's just allow for, all right, kind of an unusual. So length of the 1 in time relative to the 4 and the 5. It's not right. You wouldn't choose that for your ideal scenario here. If that's the 3 and the 4, if this is going to be the 4, so per that count, this leg of it, the impulse that we need would be here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that just by itself is. Get this off here. I mean, it's not terrible. It's a bit of a force fit in here, a little bit to go 1, 2, 3. It's long enough, so if we work it now, granted, I'm still in log scale, so if I take it from the start of the 1 through the pivot of the 2, so the proposed 2 here. So if we're going to go 1, 2. We're just coming up shy of the 1, 6, 1, 8, 4, 5. That seems to be a fit that you'd be sort of stuck with because of the overlap down here. So you'd have to go, if that's going to complete the impulse of the 3 here, right? So the idea being we've gone 1, 2, 3. So now we're back to from the 2 to the 3 high. Well, we're holding the golden zone. It's still, right? So still, right? Can you put the 4 there? Boy, that's a stretch, right? So either you're turning this into a WXYXZ, which and allowing for very abnormal, right? So you're stretching the, I often say, well, I'm not a purist, well, but there are limits here, right? So into how far you'll allow for that to just be at odds with Elliott guidelines or rules. That's a 5, guys. There's just no. You can't make the WXY because the retracements are too shallow. So if it's 5 down, what does that leave for us? Well, either we're going to end up with a very unconventional correction here because, I mean, shit, we don't have to. It's not. I mean, anything can happen. We certainly could do that. I mean, we got an algo play here, right? So some people asking me, well, the algorithms using log scale. Well, as it was taught to me many years ago, they were not. But God knows if they've modified or new players in the market, right? There's just no way for us to know, right? But we can certainly identify, well, here in log scale, I'm at a golden zone. So do I want to trade that? Well, I mean, if I were just a huge Ethereum bull, you could put a trade on here, stop under the 65. That's not going to be a disaster if you're stopped out. The risk is so low. I think that's not unreasonable. So Buying here at 181 with a stop at 150. I'm going to call it 154 to give it a little bit of room down there. That's, you know, again, you certainly wouldn't want to. My suggestion would be not to go heavy on the size here because you have an unclear count, and the subdivision is a little. You know, you're kind of accommodating to try and get it to fit up here without real clarity. So my suggestion here is that there is no trade other than just the straight algo play, right? So the Elliott would suggest that we are unresolved here and that the correction is not complete. Now, we see plenty of cases where the Elliott is misleading or things resolve, and then we're back here relabeling here. So if you're an Ethereum bull, the only reason that I would be, you know, willing to advocate for that buy there is because the risk is so low. So it's a little bit of a, well, you know, roll the dice here, see if we get a little bit of a pop. Of course, right? Can't forget there will be algos on the way back here, so you're going to have to fight through all of this. That will be the big one. So this, then you can kind of see how this, whoops, wrong one, how we could maybe see something corrective, right? So if we're going down here, well, the count gets relabeled. But if we were to hold that, then at least you could make the case that I had a corrective structure get in place, and we can deal with this 5 in context. Until then, you know, it's a real problem here technically as to how you get bullish until we start breaking through some of that. And if we do that, boy, I'm going to be interested to see how that ultimately gets labeled. I think that is less likely. So why force a trade here when there are so many other things to trade? Well, now you could say, all right, well, I'm crypto only. Well, I would tell you that's your first mistake, being crypto only, right? A chart's a chart. It's just another asset. Why be crypto only? I think that's short-sighted. How about I say it that way? But, right, if you've only got a crypto account and you don't want to pursue any other assets, well, I think you're in a holding pattern here. No, I would not buy that. So I can't recommend it to you. But if I were gun to my head, of the two, I'd be a buyer here, not a seller, right? 5 down. So at the very least, I'd be looking for something corrective. So maybe you can make a case here that you're playing into the next golden zone. So you're just anticipating we'll just stay in this range. So if you're a buyer here, what did I say, 181 with a target up here at 267, well, there, you know, that's not. I mean, you can make some money there, but I'd be realistic about how far that can go per what we're seeing here. So that's not a bad target. So you know, it's not a home run, but that's a solid base hit if you can get it from 181 to 269. You know. Right, I wouldn't lever it. I wouldn't go heavy on the leverage, but there's certainly a trade there. If you're a bull, right, and you're looking for a reason, well, there's enough of a reason, I suppose, right, with a modest amount of risk. Now, if it goes up and then with that we get some sort of a little something like that to correct it. Maybe I'll be very curious to see how that ends up getting labeled, but maybe now we're off, something else is happening, and we're back here thinking 3. God, I don't know how that's going to work. That is a 4. How we're going to get that to be corrective, but I've seen crazier things. All right, there you go. That's about all I can add there. I don't know what else to offer to you. It's not a trade I'm going to take, right? But if you were just itching for one, well, that's the best I can offer to you. All right, guys, back to you later.